Kagan?
Because, Mr. Mitchell, I mean, those 4 words are not the entire statute, function of the trigger. It's by a function of the trigger, and what's the by? It's shooting, presumably a shooter is there, but, maybe it happens spontaneously, but shooting more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. I mean, that's the relevant language, right? Shooting more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. And then there's also the automatic.
Yeah,
so
right.
I don't want to ignore that. But it seems as if you look at the entire phrase, what that means is that Congress had wanted to delink the number of shots that were coming out of a barrel, right? More than one shot. It wanted to delink that from a discrete human action. And I would think, it might be you pull the trigger, it might be you push the trigger, it might be you switch on the trigger, it might be you voice activate the trigger. There's a discrete human action, and it produces a torrent of bullets. And that's exactly what's happening here. You push the bump stock. Now, you're saying, well, maybe they didn't define the bump stock as the trigger, but it functions in precisely the same way. And a torrent of bullets comes out, and this is in the heartland of what they were concerned about, which is anything that takes just a little human action to produce more than one shot is what they were getting at.
That's just not the way they wrote the statute. If that's what they were getting at, they should have drafted the statute better than what they did. I mean, it depends on whether more than one shot is coming out by a single function of the trigger. And I agree with Your Honor. The rate of fire of a bump stock equipped rifle approaches the rate of fire of a fully automatic weapon. And there may be good policy reasons to treat these as identical. There may also be good policy reasons to distinguish them. That's ultimately a decision for Congress to make. It's certainly not a decision for a court or for an administrative agency that's charged with implementing the instructions of Congress.
Mr. Mitchell, I'll tell you, I view myself as a good textualist. I think that that's the way we should think about statutes. It's by reading them. But, textualism is not inconsistent with common sense. Like, at some point, you have to apply a little bit of common sense to the way you read a statute and understand that what this statute comprehends is a weapon that fires a multitude of shots with a single human action. Whether it's a continuous pressure on a conventional machine gun holding the trigger, or a continuous pressure on one of these devices on the barrel. I can't understand how anybody could think that those two things should be treated differently.
Well, they're treated differently because the statute turns on a single function of the trigger. And the problem for the government is they're not able to change the nature of the trigger that currently exists on a semi-automatic rifle simply by adding a bump stock, which is nothing more than a casing that allows the rifle to slide back and forth. The trigger is exactly the same as what it was before. And the function of the trigger is exactly the same as what it was before. I mean, think of a semi-automatic rifle where someone just has a very quick trigger finger. That could also have a very, very high rate of fire. But it's still one shot per function of the trigger. And that's the problem here the government still is not able to overcome. Every time that trigger functions inside a bump stock equipped rifle, there is one shot and only one shot that gets fired, even though there may be rapid functions that could occur consecutively because of the bump stock equipped device.
Thank you.